Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired, and I have an esteemed panelist with me today. Detrall Dearbone is a U.S. Army sergeant, veteran for this nation, and a CEO, founder of Dearbone Counseling Center, Incorporated. We're going to have a discussion today about the Detrall Dearbone Counseling Center, Incorporated, which specializes in behavioral issues, including addiction, trauma, and PTSD, to name a few. But in this turbulent time, we definitely need someone with her expertise. We are facing many tribulations daily, on a daily basis, looking at what's happening with the world's platform. Bipartisanship has really brought us to a really interesting place in time. But welcome, Detrall. So tell me a little bit about your organization and how you are, approaching mental health.
Well, like I said, my organization started. I've been a therapist for over 30 years. And throughout, I've worked in hospitals, and I worked for Illinois Department of Corrections and the Illinois Department of Human Services. There was not a whole lot out there for veterans in military. So I've always wanted to give back to the military community. And that's how back in 2010 is when I opened and founded the Dearbone Counseling Center. And like I said, in my specialty, I reached out to the military community because I think that we just need more providers working with the military and their spouses, and their parents, and kids. Yeah. So, like I said, being a veteran myself, my dad was in the military. My dad and my brother was in the Navy. My uncles were in the Army. I have all types of cousins in the Navy, Air Force, Marines. I just knew the importance of mental health as far as the military, their spouses, their kids.
I love that because it sounds like more of a holistic, family-centric approach. I mean, we have a tendency sometimes to look at people who have mental challenges in their life that arise as being isolated only as the person themselves, but they're part of the context of a community, part of the context of a family, right?
Yes.
So how does that work? What do you feel? Why is it so important to include the family members and even community members and friends in their dealing with this mental issue?
Well, like I said, one thing that I notice a lot is, both. Sometimes you will have the spouse who has went through the military career with the military member, but I think more or less. A lot of military members are either marrying for the first time or remarrying after they've gotten out of the military, and their spouse has no clue on how their military life was before. As far as the children, growing up in the military, you moved often. And a lot of times their children, they have a hard time connecting because they're not stable. Every couple of years they're moving. And, so working with their children is wonderful because we get to connect and they get to have some stability and learn, some skills to help them as they move around with their parents. And so the mom, I've had a couple of moms. One mom who nobody in the military, nobody in her family had ever been in the military. And somehow or another, they found me. And so I was able to help her, walk her through. Her son was in basic training, and able to walk her through. And after that point, he was in AIT maybe. And then he was getting ready to deploy over to Poland when we first started sending people back over to Poland. And she was really, really nervous. Currently, I have an Air Force mom whose son is stationed in Belgium. And, with everything going on now, she's just really concerned about her son, and I can kind of help with some of that anxiety to get the parents to understand a little bit about military life, and that our military members will protect each other, throughout their daily duties.
Yeah, that's really important, and it's really interesting when you started talking about where people start out. Some people start out with military families, maybe on a base, and they move from place to place. Other people join the National Guard, and they're already embedded in the community, and they're, doing this service. They're, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out the summer, for active training. But, I'm wondering that there's been a big difference in how people enter the military and how they return home since World War II. So people, should have 2 months or 3 months on a ship, coming back to the United States, before they got reintegrated. There was time for them to maybe decompress to some degree. But now everything is so instantaneous. Even with Vietnam, people were coming back faster than World War II. And now it's just like, it seems like overnight you're back in the States. I remember one sort of screening I had when I first got back. It was down in Fort Bliss, Texas, and for my first combat tour duty. And they said, "Well, is anyone crazy in here?" And I was like, "There's a room packed with people," and no one raised their hand. A couple of people raised their hands like a joke, and they were like, "I'm not going to raise my hand in front of my command structure to tell me that I think I'm crazy, right?" And they said, "Well, if you do have that problem, then you're going to stay here for another month or two as we work through things." And people were like, "I'm getting out of here." So there's no incentive to admit that I have some kind of issue going on. But so
like I say, the one thing I can say also, there's a big difference between active duty and reserves and guard. So most active duty, they're on a base. They're somewhere close to a military base, and they have that community. And this is really for family members. And if you're guard or reserves, you're in the community and you don't have that military family. And I see a lot of the spouses and kids struggle because other people cannot identify. And I'm sure that you may have went through some of that, being in the guard and not having the support from a military base and everything that can offer.
Yeah, and another aspect of that is that sometimes you get attached to other units. So when you come back home, you're by yourself. You're not from the state that the unit you were attached to. So you can't even talk to people who were part of your, combat arms people who with you, your battle buddies, right? So that also causes a problem. But it seems like sometimes mental health issues can be kind of insidious. They sort of are there, and people don't really recognize they're actually going through it. And someone else has to point it out to them. They lose their temper or they're trying to figure out. So, what kind of advice do you give to the family members who are seeing someone go through something, so that they can recognize, maybe I do need help. People sometimes don't want to get help, because they feel like it's because of all of the ways that things are sort of casted as being, you're weaker, or, there's a problem, and, those kinds of things that happen to try to paint mental health as a very negative thing to have, when in fact it's something that can be treated. I mean, it's much more treatable than many of the diseases we treat: diabetes, high blood pressure, and other things. Mm-hmm. So, what kind of advice would you give to the family members and to the person that, is being told, maybe you need to seek some help?
Well, I would just tell, the family members to be supportive, but for our military community. And it's kind of like when I worked in a hospital. And that's why I really like being in private practice now. Mm-hmm. When you talk about mental health, it's always has been it's always been negative, especially in the military. Mm-hmm. You're weak, you get kicked out, so nobody really wants to admit to it. And so for a military member to even go to the clinic on base or the VA, it's a hospital-like type setting. And if you've ever been in an inpatient unit, then that can bring up a lot of anxiety. So sometimes for military members, if you can start off with somebody in the community, who makes you feel safe, then that's good. But even if you don't have somebody in the community, definitely please go get help, because, again, this is something that you don't have to struggle with alone. So this is what I want to tell the family and the military members. You don't have to struggle alone. I really do so when I've served back some time, and they didn't have and I talk about the military one source program. I really like that. And that's for active duty members, active duty guards and reserves. So it's a non-medical counseling program, and it helps individuals get their foot in the door as far as talking to a therapist about deployment issues, redeployment issues, parenting issues. And so that is a first step into counseling. Okay.
Yeah, how do people get to the One Source program? Do they have to go online, or is there like a mechanism that people
Yep,
go
you
through?
go online. You go online. Just put in Military One Source, and there's a whole website. You call them, and they will link you to a therapist. And the good thing about Military One Source, so a little bit about my background, is I am licensed in Illinois, Georgia, Missouri, Kansas, in Kansas. So, basically, I've tried to get licensed in states where we have a big military population because of the Military One Source program. The good thing about Military One Source 2 is if you're OCONUS, if you're overseas, we can still see you. The only thing is we have to adjust our time to the military members. So I've worked with people in Bahrain, in Korea, and so it gives military members a better opportunity of getting the help. So just call Military One Source. A lot of times I'm getting a lot of officers in the program, and they say, yep, we're going to go back and we're going to tell this, we're going to pass this information out, because I don't know how well it's being promoted, but we're here, and Military One Source is a really big program.
Yeah, that's very great information. I'm actually going to mention it to my VSO, my VFW posts, because we have American Legion posts and VFW posts, and the VSOs, veteran service officers, try to help people as far as their medical claims and all those kinds of things in the background, getting them kind of some source, social services and that kind of thing. But this is really a critical issue that people need to know. So that One Source, you just go to Military One Source, and that's it for Googling. Okay.
But for veterans, so veterans who are, well, let's say, so if you're getting Champ VA, so I'm also a provider for Champ VA. Okay. And also the other one is Community Care Network. So let's say that you couldn't get into the VA, or there was some issue and you didn't like your therapist at the VA, you can request through Community Care Network to see an outside provider. So I'm also I'm credentialed to work with Community Care Network and Champ VA. So there's different programs out there for military.
Okay. And how's the insurance side of things? Because I'm a physician, so I know insurance could be not just an uphill battle. They say, it's one of my friends who's a veteran from Vietnam. He's an attorney, but he always says that his father said that, in order to start out, you have to climb to the bottom of the hill. So sometimes it can be quite a challenge. But how do you feel about that? How does that working out?
Well, they're both working out now. Let's see, Champ VA, the government redid some things, and we all had to do direct deposit, and that became a problem. But now, since we got that resolved, payments are good. Payments are on time. So, yes.
Yeah, because that's really important. You have to support the service that's being provided, and a lot of people don't really realize that you can't keep your lights on and run your practice on $0, right?
Yes.
but without we always go with de-identified data and all that. But with any cases that come to mind that where you feel that the person really was helped by getting the counseling, or some success stories about people who went and sought the help and actually came out of it a better person.
Oh, well, I think a lot. So, like I said, we're going to start back with probably people still serving. After working with a lot of my people, it gives them the motivation to want to stay in, because sometimes when I get people, they're just, that they're at a point in their career to where they really don't know what to do, the military is tough. You know, you and I've been there. We know that. And, you know, if you have issues going on with the family or multiple deployment, because I have some people who that, you know, deploy, and they're like, I can't even take care of my family. So based on having to be able to talk with us, you know, the providers, it gives them a peace of mind. It helps them to get their lives together. So we work with people with life issues. So it helps them to get their lives together so they can be productive and can stay in the military. I have a lot of success stories. That's why I like the program. I stay with it. I like giving back. I'm trying to think. And well, I guess recently, you know, with the boy, I just lost it. And I say it all the time now. Oh God, please forgive me.
No problem. Yeah.
With the PACT Act. Okay, I'm sorry. With the PACT Act.
Yes.
So we're getting a lot of success with the PACT Act because people, you know, again, I've worked with people, and I'm gonna go back to a couple of women. They didn't realize that while in basic training, that they actually had military sexual trauma. So as they're talking to me, and we're talking about stuff like that, and I'm like, well, you know, I don't know that, you know, that was supposed to happen. You know, your drill sergeant was not supposed to do that. So I had a lady I worked with a few years ago, and, you know, we kind of talked about it. And recently she called me and said, you know what? I was thinking about it. That was military sexual trauma, you know. And from there she went to the VA to get her treatment, only because of some other technicalities, but that allowed her the opportunity to say, yes, I did experience military sexual trauma, and I'm going to get treated for it.
Yeah, that's very important for you know, for women to know that they have a place in the military. They're the strength of the military too, and you know, working with the medical units, I had some of the most fantastic nurses and and you know, people who are medics. You know, pulling people out of some really hairy situation on combat. You know, stabilizing people and that kind of thing. And that's one other thing is that, you know, this whole helicopter crash, I'm going to be talking about that in another segment, you know, in DC. So I was a flight surgeon and I was on Black Hawk helicopters, UH-60s. And it gave me a couple of flashbacks to, you know, some real hot time periods when I was over in Iraq. We were being fired on, we were in sandstorms, that, you know, a lot of stuff that was going on there. So the context of things can be different for a veteran than the general public and the person, because they're just looking at you know, an explosion on a television set, and they're not in it, you know. And so, you know, so how do people, you know, how do you deal with that when people are, you know, having mental issues about triggers that are going on in their life, and, you know, trying to get them to understand some of the things. I know, you know, you have a therapeutic plan that's really deep, but you know, what are some of the things that happen with that?
Well, like I said, so I have a specialty. So I'm trauma informed, and I'm also EMDR. So that's a special form of therapy that helps deal with trauma and moral issues. So a lot of times, so based on what it is, I cannot do EMDR with Military One Source because it's not medical. But a lot of times I will get veterans with their own private insurance, you know, and I work with a lot of them. So we will go through EMDR, and that helps. So what it does, it reprocesses. So we talk about traumatic events. For some people, that trauma get maladaptively stored in the wrong part of the brain. And what EMDR does, it reprocesses that trauma and stores it correctly in the correct part of the brain. So I tell people it's like a train. There's like a train that's on the train track, and it's not moving. And you know, it's causing all types of chaos. And people don't realize that until we go through the EMD process, or they start talking to me about their, some of their symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And we do EMDR, and it helps to reprocess those maladaptively stored memories. And, they feel really, really good
Yeah.
after we can do that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and one of the other issues is that many times, when you come back, like I was, it was kind of humorous when I was saying I came back and they said, is anyone crazy in the room? That kind of thing, you know. But we have to be very careful in the medical community, and also as people in the community, to say, oh, that's nothing, just brush it off. It's not really a problem. And there seems to be a sort of a push to make people think that what they're experiencing is, oh, it's nothing, it's trivial, you'll get over it in a week. It's just it's just something you're going through, and that can be really destructive to the process of healing, or people coming back. So what kind of advice would you give to people who are providing care to veterans that are not part of, haven't had the experience of being part of the military, don't understand how veterans, feel and operate? Is there something that you would say to the general community, or to other providers who are out there who don't really take care of veterans on a regular basis?
Well, I would tell them, and I do tell them, I said, get out there, get to know veterans, get out there to know them, talk to them. Just don't automatically think, the thing is, when
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, you're in the military, first thought is, oh, they're crazy, they got PTSD. No, really get to know them, get to know the community, get to know how they lived, get to know the how tight the military community is. So that would be my best thing, is just to go out there and really talk to them, not to people in your office, but there's, if you got family members, if there's a lot of military people out there, go to events, learn about the military, and learn that they're people, military people are people, who, and they're in a really tough spot, because like you said, even like now, even though it's better, and I say it's better than when I served, mental health, if you're crazy, if you have mental health issues, your command may still look down on you. They may still say that you're not ready for the mission, and then your people, the people around you, may not trust you. And you have to know all of this stuff when you're working with military people, because, it's not simple. It's not as simple as working with civilians. Okay. And sometimes military members will not open up. And one of the big things is they don't open up about how much alcohol they use, because they don't want to be looked down upon with the therapist. So really getting to know, like I said, that's talking to military people, talking to veterans, talking to everyone, and getting yourself exposed into that lifestyle will help you become a better provider, to understand that if I'm active duty, I may not just come out and go, hey, I'm having night terrors. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really important point. And when you were mentioning alcohol, it's making me think also of, that there is a military personality, and it's almost like you have multiple personalities in a person. So you have the enemy combatant, right? That you're going out to do harm to someone. You're trying to protect your people who are around you, within your unit. And then there is another time where you're off of that shift. And one of the things that I found when I was actually in Iraq, because I did a couple of tours there, is that the downtime was where people had problems.
Yes.
They were sitting there going like, well, this is not why I'm here. I'm here to be a combatant. I should be out in the field. So it drove them to go out over and over and over again. And that kind of thing also becomes the way that they identify themselves as a person. And so I should be angry. I should be, and I'm wondering if that has some relationship to how people, view whether this is something normal or abnormal, that I'm yelling at my supervisor, at my boss. Maybe not a good idea. But maybe there's some kind of correlation between that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that it is. So I'm saying I think that it is.
Yeah. Because I think that it's maybe harder for people to have a little bit more insight, and say, oh, maybe this isn't right, and I shouldn't be doing this. And so, but but there's so many things that, and the thing is that you were saying this before about, you automatically are crazy and PTSD and this horrible image of a soldier. I think most of them don't have that that particular picture. And how does this affect families too? Having the person that is maybe their supporter, the person that's their partner, being viewed like that.
Well, it does. It devastates families because, again, as soon as, like I said, and especially for the people who've married their military spouse later on, and they may not have any idea. And then, people go, oh, you got PTSD, and, so people look at them and that impacts the family. And, it makes the spouse say, oh, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be in this marriage. What's going on here?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we have a couple of minutes to go, and I just wanted you to give just a view of what you think people should do if they're seeking help, or their family members, if they know someone needs that help, who's a veteran. And I'm just going to have one personal request. You have 5 states you mentioned you were licensed in, but you can mention those again. But I'm hoping you add Hawaii, because I'll come to visit you.
Well, I get to do Hawaii free, well, no, I guess no, Hawaii's a state, so I may have to add Hawaii. Yeah, that might be a good one. We got the degree in Hawaii. Yeah,
okay,
but serious note, so I'm licensed in Illinois, Georgia, Kansas, Missouri. You have all your big military bases there.
Right.
But the first thing is, we do have our VA systems. We have vet clinics, okay? Don't be afraid. I'm gonna say, please don't be afraid. That's probably the biggest fear, is trusting, because people in the military were tough. We've been tough. We can't be weak. And that's the biggest thing that people see, that they feel weak. So please, let's trust the system. Find a therapist that you really enjoy, okay? And get the help that you need.
Oh, thank you, Detrall Dearbone, CEO, therapist at Dearbone Counseling Center. Wonderful, wonderful job you're doing. Thank you for all the service you give to our veterans and their families.
Good. And thank you for having me. I really love doing this.
Okay, we'll have you back.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources.
Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I am your host, U.S. Army Iraqi Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. And I have a panelist that I'm so happy to see him. He is like a warm part of my heart every time I see him. But this is Stephen Bramer. He is a U.S. Army Iraq Purple Heart recipient, a veteran, and a chapter service officer of Hammond, Indiana, DAV Chapter 17. He is one of the most remarkable people I know. He's helping so many veterans navigate through troubling times, and we need this more now than ever. And what we're going to do is have a discussion about the DAV 2025 agenda, the new VA, and also President Trump's administration. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's always good to see
Happy
you.
New Year.
Happy New Year. I guess we can still say that.
Yeah, right?
Okay, Steve. So tell me, what's going on with the DAV 2025 agenda?
So, it's the beginning of the year. So everybody's just getting everything, planned out for the the rest of the year. And, as far as my chapter in Hammond specifically, we have a couple events throughout the year. We have our walk that's going to be in September. We have a tribute dinner that's also at the Hard Rock Casino, which has been it's been the highlight of the year for a lot of for the past 3-4 years. So it's been a really good experience when it comes to going to that. We had Jessica Lynch there actually. I think it was 2 years ago. Was the guest speaker.
So wow.
Yeah, and their story is phenomenal. I mean, the way that she was able to articulate what happened to her and how it was to see the soldiers come in. I mean, it was just a great experience to meet her. And then as far as Illinois, the DAVs in Illinois, we're still trucking along. I'm also part of Chapter 42 in Addison, Illinois. They meet the third Friday of the month. And, it's when it comes to the DAV, it's just about helping veterans. It doesn't matter, what type of political climate it is or what's going on in the world. Our focus is on helping veterans.
Yeah. Do you have a date and time for the casino run that's coming up?
Yeah. So that one we don't have yet, but as soon as I do have that, I'll definitely share it.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, we're planning all that out now. It's these some of these things, they do get planned so far in advance.
Yeah,
but
that
one we're still working on.
Bitcoin. I have to get some more Bitcoin so I can participate.
Yeah, right. I can get some Bitcoin too.
Well, so what's
how's everything?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how have you been?
Oh, doing good. Just in the new year and trying to adjust to all the new changes and things that are going on. But one thing is the new VA. What is it about the new VA? What's your view on that and how it's going to shape up?
It's it's the VA. So, us veterans, we've been dealing with bureaucracy forever.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Through every president, something changes, but but it is something that we have to look towards. During Trump's first administration, they did away with a lot of the case law that was, that veterans would take VA to court and then they would win, and then that would become what's called case law, where they would then be able to use that as reference towards other claims and stuff. And that got kind of did away when they did, I think that was the Appeals Modernization Act. So then when Biden came in, that's when they did the whole PACT Act. So that was a big change as well. A lot of stuff that would previously get denied, like heart disease for Agent Orange, was now finally some of the changes is that I know of is tinnitus is now not a standalone claim, or a rating.
Oh,
Now
really?
tinnitus has to be. The other one that I've heard of is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is now based off of, so the way that they graded sleep apnea before is they graded it off the treatment. So if you had the CPAP machine, then it was 50%, but they wanted to change it. So now it's geared towards, how many times you stop breathing throughout the night. So those are changes that we're trying to adjust to and see how that affects our veterans that we're helping.
Wow. That's a big change. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep apnea was the only condition where they graded it off the treatment. Before it wasn't graded off of how many times you stopped breathing throughout the night. It was based off of if you had a CPAP machine. So now that they're changing it's they're going to have to come up with the rules for it and what the criteria is, and then we're going to have to see how that is. I've heard there's going to be other changes, but I don't know yet what those are.
Yeah, but will that be retroactively applied, or this for people who are applying, going to the future? So I'm wondering if people are going to lose their benefit. Yeah.
So if you had sleep apnea already, and you had the 50%, you're grandfathered in. Then if you file for sleep apnea starting now, then you would be covered under the new criteria. So the problem is, what a lot of people is, whenever you file a claim, you're opening your claim for everything. So if say I had sleep apnea at 50%, and then I had 40% for my back, and I file a claim for my knee. Well, when I file my claim for my knee, the VA can look at those other conditions, even though you didn't file it. So you're taking a risk of them being able to look at, like, say, sleep apnea and trying to do it off of the new criteria. So you got to be careful about when you're filing a claim. Yeah, it's another one is when guys have 100%, like happened with the PACT Act. Guys had 100%, then they were eligible for other conditions, so they would apply, and then it would get granted. They wouldn't get any extra money, any extra percentage. But what happened is it would restart, because they look at how many years you have in a condition for certain things. Like if you have 100% for 10 consecutive years and you're married for 1 year, then your spouse can get what's called DIC, the death benefits.
Oh, yeah.
So if he were to file and get and change the claim at all, it could restart that time and he could lose those 10 years. So those are things that people got to be aware of when they file. Yeah, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, because I'm hoping that the VSOs know that, the veteran service officers, when they're working with people on claims right now, that the danger of working with a claim under the current administration. So that could be that deadly. Yeah.
That's why I recommend people to go to a VSO, because they're supposed to know all the new rules. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times we'd have to get all new paperwork to file for the VA. And they don't really tell you. You go on va.gov, and then they would have the new paperwork on there. But if you were to file it on the old paperwork, and like say they did a change today, and I filed on paperwork I had yesterday, well, they would take it back and they would deny it and say, no, you got to refile it. You got to use this paperwork. So, it's those little things that the VSO can help you with that normal veterans wouldn't know about.
Wow. Well, speaking of that, so going into the future, with President Trump's administration coming in now, what do you hope to see, for them to pay attention to, as far as veterans are going? We were talking about, potentially going to Gaza, and we been talking about using the military, in multiple different interventions on the border and all kinds of things. And, I'm hoping that there is not a diminution in people wanting to serve the country, and wanting to, put the uniform on with honor. But what do you think we need to be looking for? Are there things like the PAC Act not to make sure that stays in place, and other things that were, granted as benefits to veterans who actually put their lives on the line, and many of them Gold Star families, and they're taking some of the benefits from that because of the sacrifice they made in their lives, and we make on a daily basis. But are certain things that you're looking to, for the administration to do?
So my opinion, this is not anybody else's, but this is my opinion. As a veteran, I go to Jesse Brown in Chicago for treatment, and I go to Anna Benjamin in Crown Point for treatment. And when I want to go to primary care, no problem. Never have a problem getting an appointment. But if I want to go to specialty care, takes 3 or 4 months to get an appointment. And those are the things that I would like to see the VA work on in getting more specialty care doctors or dentists, or I had a dentist appointment. I went to Jesse Brown. It took like 3 or 4 months before I had the appointment. I went there, and their X-ray machine was down. So then they're like, "Well, we see the problem, but we can't do nothing until we do the X-ray." So now I got an appointment, and this was in November. My next appointment is in February. So that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And when you look at it and you see that and then when you look at it and you see that the VA spent 42% of their budget on outside care, I personally feel like we're starting to hit that fine line where they're outsourcing a lot of the stuff that maybe I don't know if that's such a good thing, because now you're taking away from the VA part of it. And I like the VA. I think the VA has made great strides over the years compared to how it was, and what I've heard people say how it was 20, 30 years ago. I think the VA is doing really good. And I like to see them continue to improve on that. It's nice to be able to walk in and know that that's a hospital that's just for veterans, just for me, and I don't know if I'm all on board with this whole outsourcing it. You can definitely tell that it's taken away from the VA budget, and from, maybe doctors that they could employ at the VA instead of outsourcing it. So, I mean, that's my opinion,
So
but
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, Steve, because one of the things that, I feel like a lot of the people who are working there really, really, really care about veterans. They have, feel it's a family. And you have many of the people who work there who are former veterans, right? Who are veterans who are former military, military retired. And it's a different kind of environment. And they also understand how to, put forms together, what to put down, what questions to ask you. And if you go to a general practitioner, they have no idea of what you encounter in a UH-60 helicopter, right? As a machine gunner, what do you encounter? There's no.
And you're right.
Yeah, and they don't understand the ethos of the military, of why people would do what they do, and why it's important for them to be part of that. And then looking out for things, knowing that there's certain things I need to look out for, because I went to one person, and like I have a oral antral fistula. It's like on the one of my teeth, right? It's from the sinus cavity, and that's one of the things that happens with the pressures you go through on a UH-60. So I went on a lot of missions and developed this thing. So I was speaking to a outside ENT, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know they really, that happens." And I was like, "Yes, it does." And I had to refer him to a couple of papers to look at. Like, okay, it's time to go back to the VA.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right, because the VA has experience with veterans and the traumatic experiences that we deal with when we're in the military. It's inherently dangerous just to be in the military. I mean, you could get hurt in basic training. You could get hurt, just on base, there's a lot of it's inherently dangerous. And the doctors and nurses I feel at the VA are the experts on that. So it's nice to know that those people are there when when I have a dentist appointment. When I got hurt in Iraq, I slammed my face on the weapon after the wire got me around the neck. I slung shot forward and I hit my face on the weapon, knocked myself out. So when I go there and they see that I have TBI in my records, they see that I messed up my front of my face. Like they see that and they know how to treat certain things like that. So it's, that's why I like them. And I feel like they've made a lot of good strides over the years, but that brings me back to, the specialty part about it. Like the pulmonary. I mean, it's just, those are the things that I wish they had more access to, and not have to wait so long for an appointment when it comes to those things.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the history of the military and how many medical things came out of it. I mean, we were working with, burn creams and I mean, you name it, doing amputations, vascular surgery. I mean, it's amazing all of the science and technology that came out of the military itself that came from the VA system.
Yeah.
And, so people were learning that. But yeah, so what is it that you feel, for the DAV 2025 agenda is critical for people to understand? How do they connect with you and connect with the DAV in order to, benefit from all the things you offer? Because you offer an array of things, right? So how would they get in contact with you or, get involved in DAV activities?
Okay. So so there's a good question. And, what the DAV has is the DAV has offices at the different centers. So at Jesse Brown, across from the parking lot in the government part of it, there's the DAV Chicago office where you can go there and you can file a claim, or you could add benefit or add dependents to your claim. Indianapolis also has a DAV office. But what I direct people to do is to go to the different meetings throughout the month, and Illinois has a lot of them. There's DAV Chapter 84 in Crestwood. That one, if anybody wanted to go to that one is the first Friday at 6:30 p.m. at 4428 Midlothian Turnpike in Crestwood. There's DAV Chapter 6 in Chicago. That one is the second Tuesday at 7 p.m. And that one, the address for that is 809 East 42nd Place in Chicago. There's DAV Chapter 42, Chicago, Illinois. That one's the third Friday at 6 p.m. And the address for that is 446 West Lake Street. And when you go to these different meetings, there's a DAV National Service Officer that goes to these meetings. And, that's why I like the DAV, because you don't just have to go to the office in Chicago to see a service officer. They also have service officers that go to the meetings. And I feel like it's a lot easier to be able to ask certain questions to the service officer. The service officer can actually sit down with you and look at your claim, access the VA system, tell you what's the best route to go. Because when you do a claim, you want to be able to go off of the evidence that you have in your records. So the fact that the DAV has access to the VA system is huge. So when you go to these different meetings, you would just, sign in, and then they'll call you at the end of the meeting. They call you up, and I have one that goes to my chapter, Robert, and that one is the one in Hammond. It's the first Thursday, which is actually tomorrow of the month, and it's at 7 p.m. at 5820 Holman Avenue. And, I think Robert's awesome. He does great work. He's very thorough. And, the fact that these guys, when they go to the meetings, the DAV doesn't tell them to go to the meetings. They go and they volunteer on their own time. So when they're going to the DAV meetings, they're not getting paid for that. They're volunteering their time to do that. And I like that. I think that's awesome. The veteran community is very a lot of volunteerism with the veteran community, and I like that because that's what I do. I volunteer a lot of my time too.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, because that this is something that it's like you don't ask for pay when you take care of your family, right? And this is how we feel about each other. It's family. There's nothing that a veteran couldn't ask me to help them do, that's legal. but there's nothing they couldn't ask me to do, to help them, to live a better life. They deserve it every moment that they're existing and breathing, and that's just part of our life and what we should be part of. So
I think this is a great time for veterans in this area, because I feel like veterans are very active in Northwest Indiana and Chicagoland area. I mean, it's just when you go to some of these DAV meetings, like the one in Addison, or in Addison, Illinois, the Chapter 42 one, and you'll see 100, 150 veterans there, and that's awesome, because now you're talking to veterans who've been through the system, have been through claims, and they can explain their part of it to you and what they experienced. And veterans, we're a unique group. We went through something unique, and it doesn't end after you get out of service. We like to stick together. We like to be there for each other, and I love that about veterans. We don't leave a man behind.
Yeah, most definitely. And earlier I had a discussion with Dee Thal. She's actually working with a group that is providing mental health services, and she talks about the context of family and community. And we had a discussion about that veterans should not be left alone within their own communities too, and within their own families. People need to realize that they have, needs that they can help them with, and help to rebuild some of the things that their lives, for some of the things they experienced. We've had people who are over in Iraq, and it still is astounding to me, doing 2 tours, 3 tours, 4 tours, 5 tours. I mean, it's like unheard of, unprecedented in history of the military, that people were spending that much time in combat. And it almost like it reminds me of, the Civil War. People were in there for years, right? And that's the only thing I can compare it to, because you always had rotations, World War II or Vietnam or Korea. So there's some really different kinds of things that people are contending with right now, that they were not contending with sometimes in some other time periods. But all veterans have gone through a tremendous sacrifice, just by putting a uniform on, as you said. And you were mentioning that earlier about, you're always at risk, and it's always an inherently dangerous thing. We learned that just now with the helicopter, accident in DC. And this was a training mission, a nighttime training mission in a UH-60 with, and we don't know all the details about the night vision goggles and altitude and all that. NTSB is still trying to figure all that stuff out. But my heart just goes out to them and their families, that, they, died during a training mission. And people think that, the only way you can, potentially die in the military is in combat. No, mobilization itself is inherently dangerous and can lead to the deaths of people. And so we have to realize that this is a dangerous job that people have accepted, by putting that uniform on. And so what do you see on the horizon for, veterans? What would you like to see as far as veterans benefits? Because you were talking before about making sure that, you get more access to acute specialty care, and without having to wait months and those kinds of things. What other things do you think that veterans need to be, exposed to. I was mentioning to this psychologist earlier that one of the things is that mental health is, for example, PTSD. People have a tendency to say, "Oh, this is a veteran. This is a combat veteran. This is crazy," right? And they don't give you anything. It becomes a stigma, right? And it becomes a negative thing about this person. And I was saying, what would she tell other providers who are out there who are in the general public treating people, about veterans? And she was saying, treat them as people and learn who they are. And there needs to be a recognition that that person that is, wearing, an old military jacket or wearing a cover, with what they have gone through, it is also a badge of honor. They were honored to have given their time and their effort and whatever they went through to secure the nation. They're securing the foundations of democracy, an open public space for you to have public discussions, a public square, making sure that you pay attention to the right to vote for everyone, and making sure that we address the concerns of minority groups. And when I say minority groups, military personnel are part of a minority group. We're less than 1% of people who serve right in the country. And so and we need to have a judicial system that's fair for our veterans when they face those things. We have a veterans court downtown Chicago. But this is something that I think that they have to understand what it means to have served, and that in a very nonpartisan way, making sure that we are doing things that are constructive for veterans as a society, because your freedom is not free. You depend on them to make sure that you maintain that. And we're going into some very difficult times, politically and globally, with potential wars and all kinds of things. Realize that those are the people that are going to be protecting you. So we have a couple of minutes to go now. So I'm going to let you just tell us, how people should be getting involved with the DAV 2025 agenda. Should they be getting in contact with their legislators to make sure that veterans are supported as we're going into this new administration and as things start to change? How can people, reach out? And so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about, what you feel the services are available from the DAV, and then what people should be doing in the general public to support us.
Yeah, so I definitely think, if you're a veteran, you should definitely get involved, because the VA is something that you may need in the future. A lot of these younger guys, you're right, they did go on 4 or 5 different tours, unprecedented. And, now they're back civilians, and, a lot of them get jobs, they have their own health care, they don't really need the VA. But then when something bad happens, that's when it could really, be something that could benefit you in the future, but, get involved and keep track of the legislation that's out there, and, contact your legislators for benefits for veterans.
Okay, we're out of time, Steve, but we're going to have you back again, of course. But I'll be getting my Bitcoin ready, so let me know about that compute all night. And stay with us.
Right.
For our next show.
Thanks, Doctor. Good seeing you.
See you.
Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise.
Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
To the cloud, and then it's
welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome.
It hadn't come yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
TEDRITTMD.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
And sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Information and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to American Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Iraq Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. You know, I am actually here to talk about a topic that is dear to my heart. You know, as a partner of America's Heroes Group and the president and CEO of ADAPHP, I am really deeply saddened by what happened with the helicopter and plane crash over the Potomac. It actually brought back some memories of when I was doing my combat service over Iraq, and we were fired upon by ground forces, enemy ground forces. And I remember having our AQL, but there's a countermeasure that goes out from the airport, you know, from the helicopter. And this actually caused me to have a moment where we were all sitting there, and we call it the pucker factor. You know, you just feel everything tightening up in your body. But, you know, we could have all died on that helicopter at that point. And there were several instances where helicopters were shot down during my deployment. But on January 29th, the American Eagle Flight 5342 collided with a military Black Hawk helicopter as a jet originating from Wichita, Kansas, attempted to land at Reagan National Airport near DC. The American Airlines crew included Captain Jonathan Campos, 34, and First Officer Sam Lilly, 28. The Black Hawk crew included Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara, Chief Warrant Officer 2 Andrew Eves, and Captain Rebecca M. Lobach. All 5 of these people who were manning these aircraft were people who had put many, many hours into training. And my heart goes out to them and their families. Actually, I believe the captain on the airplane actually was prior service, from what I understand. This is something that is earth-shattering. It left 67 victims. And there's been a lot of talk in the media about who's at fault and who's doing this. But we had to take a moment to reflect. You know, these people had family members who gathered to pay their respects for loved ones who were lost in the crash. And we need to give some time to say our prayers and to give our support to those families. Being in the military is inherently dangerous. And even during a training mission, this will serve to prove to people that even in training missions, we've lost military personnel. Even mobilizing the military to go to war, there's a certain expected death rate because of the mechanization of moving, multiple tanks and heavy equipment and aircraft. That this is something that happens as part of being part of the military. So we always say, freedom isn't free. And sometimes we have people who give their lives for our freedom. These people should be respected and honored for what they've done in keeping our nation moving and safe and secure. The firemen, divers, EMS workers, and the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, worked around the clock to recover the bodies and the essential evidence required to determine what had occurred. As these family members gathered to pay their respects, there were crews working around the clock to make sure that these bodies were recovered and could be treated in a dignified and respectful way. The black boxes and the flight data recorders have been recovered from the wreckage with a cockpit voice recorder and a flight data recorder, which have been taken to the NTSB labs for analysis. I want to also compliment our partners, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and our local radio and television stations for the dignified way in that they're reporting this information. The Washington Post reported that a passenger jet had to abort a landing at Reagan National Airport just 24 hours before the fatal crash due to a helicopter being close to its landing flight path, causing the air traffic controllers to tell the twin-engine jet, Embraer ERJ-175, to go around. This is highlighting the complications and management challenges of having helicopter traffic around the busy Washington area airport. When we start talking about these things, we have to remember that they're not just numbers and boxes and fault and blame going around, but we have the lives of people involved in those tragedies. This may have been a clue that we should have a higher level of scrutiny. It's being reported by several media outlets that over the last 25 years, we've had about 15 incidents where they were considered to be close calls. The night of the crashes, a supervisor at the airport reportedly allowed one of the two air traffic controllers on duty to quit early, leaving the tower with the staff levels that were not normal for the time of day and volume of traffic present. And this was according to a report from the New York Times. They're saying that the helicopter involved in the crash was at least 100 feet above its planned route, according to news reports. But the NTSB wants to have more evidence and more proof that this is actually correct. They want to be accurate in what they're saying because the consequences are somewhat devastating to the airplane industry and to the military operations themselves. we have to focus on the totality of people. And Lobach served as an aviation officer from July 2019 to January 2025. So this is a long period of time in aviation. This is about 6 years that she has been flying helicopters. She was assigned to the 12th Aviation Battalion, Fort Belvoir. During her career, Lobach served as a White House military social aide, even escorting the fashion icon Ralph Lauren when he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Joe Biden in 2024. She was part of the fabric of America. It disheartens me when I see people trying to point to deficiencies in what happened in the personnel that were involved. She was a qualified helicopter pilot. She also had an instructor pilot, Andrew Eves, who was a father and husband and a chief warrant officer in the U.S. Army from Knockboxy County, Mississippi. And I think it's Norby. Sorry about the pronunciation. But also you had Ryan O'Hara, who was a husband, father, and a crew chief on board the Black Hawk helicopter. The crew chiefs are responsible for the maintenance of the aircraft. It was a difficult night. They were working with night vision goggles, and anyone who's been in the cockpit of a helicopter knows the seriousness of boarding that aircraft. I remember being in Iraq and getting on a helicopter, and what happens is that the person who is in charge of the flight, the head pilot, has to read through a protocol. So you have to actually read through a listing of all the safety features on the aircraft every time you get on. Could you imagine if you had to read through the safety manual for your automobile every time you had to get on in the car, and with the stipulation that if you were not there for the entire reading, you could not get into that vehicle. You could not get onto the helicopter. From the moment they say the first word, you are cut off from entering the aircraft if you are not present for that first word. The manifest changes of the people who are allowed to enter the aircraft. I remember this very well because I remember looking at someone in the distance running up to our helicopter. And I said, isn't that person too late to get on board? And the head pilot said, no, they're not getting on board with us. And when the person got to us, it was the chaplain. We had to say a prayer for the safety and very survival of everyone who was getting on that Black Hawk helicopter. We were going on dangerous missions with no guarantee of coming back. And I remember having to go to ceremonies for those people who were Black Hawk helicopters who did not survive, who were shot down. One of our congressional members, Tammy Duckworth, is a decorated combat veteran. She lost both of her legs and had to be resuscitated several times, but survived and is one of the most powerful people I know on earth. She was a woman, but she was more than that. She was a powerful, dedicated combat veteran. Don't ever forget that. The helicopter crew was very experienced and were not unfamiliar with the aircraft or the congestion that occurs in the airspace around DC's airport. Both pilots had flown this specific route before at night. This wasn't something new to either one of them. Even the crew chief in the Black Hawk helicopter has been in the unit for a very long time. And this was reported by Jonathan Kozal, the Chief of Staff of the Army Aviation. They were very familiar with the area, very familiar with the routing structure. But accidents do occur, and we should not assuage blame to those who put on the uniform bravely to secure your safety, your security, the very bed space where you put your head down on a pillow every night, expecting to wake in the morning safe and secure in this nation. So as we go forward, I hope those people who never wore the uniform, never jumped on back of a helicopter, a Black Hawk helicopter, and went into combat, take a moment to reflect on the sacrifice that these veterans made every day of their service for us. NTSB officials say it is still too early to tell exactly what the fault of the collision was. But in my non-professional view, I am not an NTSB analyst or official. There was a confluence of a multitude of things that caused that accident to happen. Let us hope we move forward to find a resolution to the problem so these tragedies don't happen in the future. But we should never, never dishonor the people who were aboard that American Airlines plane or the people aboard that Army Black Hawk helicopter as we go forward. Keep them in your prayers, in your thoughts. And now, from that helicopter crash, we have 3 Gold Star families. 3 more veterans that gave their life for this country. Honor them. Thank you for your time and listening to this message. It is so dear to my heart and to every service member's heart that I know.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I am your host, U.S. Army Iraqi combat medic and flight surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. We have a guest panelist that I've had on before. All I can say is that this is one of the remarkable people at Kaiser Family Foundation. She is a senior correspondent, Julie Appleby. And I read her articles all the time now. She doesn't know, but I'm a fan. But the Kaiser Family Foundation is the health policy, research, polling, and news organization that includes KFF Health News. And this is a really incredible article you've written. And I have so much to talk to you about this. But the discussion is going to be about Julie's KFF Health News article. And it was written on January 31st, 2025. I advise you, I admonish you, go and read her article. But it's Trump's order on gender-affirming care escalates reversal of trans rights. This is a really deep issue. You know, one of the things is that we have democracy requires openness. So the town square test is, you know, having public debates and discussions and being able to have freedom of speech, you know, being able to vote people out if we think that people are not fit for what they're doing, and, you know, watching out for minority rights. That's a test. But these are required an independent judiciary that is intact to make sure. But the media, you know, what Julie is doing is so important to bring the topic forward in a democracy and to have freedom of speech. So there's an executive order protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. And I'm going to hand it over to Julie because what she's written is truly remarkable. Hi, Julie. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, great. And, you know, some of the things that you were mentioning is that it requires congressional or regulatory actions to be fully enacted in order to have this particular executive order implemented. And this it's really a chilling effect that you were mentioning about this type of thing. The advocates are sort of up in arms about its effect on not only the delivery of healthcare services, but also insurance claim problems that can arise from this as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the article and how this is really fitting into the new way that the administration is approaching things with executive orders?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So this is, like you mentioned, is an executive order. Mm-hmm. And the order itself aims to prohibit government-funded insurance coverage of what are called puberty blockers and other hormone treatments or surgery for people under the age of 19 who want to change their gender. So it was an order that came out, and like a lot of executive orders, it's fairly broadly written. Mm-hmm. Would you like to talk about the order, or let's talk a little bit about what are executive orders, right? I mean,
right, sure,
what are they?
Yes.
There's something that the president has the power to do, and President Trump has issued quite a flurry of executive orders across a whole range of areas. In the healthcare arena, I think on day one, he rescinded a number of orders issued by his predecessor, President Joe Biden. Those orders had promoted lowering drug costs and expanding coverage under the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. So he did that, and he's done executive orders pretty much every day since then. And these are signed directives from the president that direct agencies to take specific actions or to stop doing certain things. So some of that might be immediate. So, for example, we saw federal agencies, for example, immediately begin scrubbing the term gender from government documents and web pages following one of these directives, one of these earlier directives. But a lot of times these types of orders often require new rules or even legislation, and that can take weeks or months. So just because something's in an executive order doesn't mean it goes into effect immediately. And also remember, federal courts can be called on to review executive orders and determine whether it's a valid exercise of the president's power. So, for example, during the first Trump term, federal courts ruled that his administration did not have the authority to issue an executive order withholding federal funding from sanctuary cities. So we see these a lot. Every president does them. President Trump has been very busy with these executive orders. And so I wrote about this one from last week.
Yes, yeah. And he had one executive order defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. And it's defining, our who we are as either being male or female. And, so using the word, sex instead of the word gender, which really, changes the conversation. And one of the things I'm astounded by is that there have been, orders coming out from the CDC to remove all research related to the use of the term gender. So going back in history and going forward, you can't use gender and, certain terminology when you're reporting scientific data. So we're going to lose a significant amount of scientific data just from the accessibility standpoint on the websites.
Right. I haven't written about that topic, but I have seen other stories that many government agencies are busy, scrubbing certain things from their websites and changing things. And the word gender is being replaced by the term sex. So that it will be male or female. And then gender identity is being removed from some things. But again, I haven't written on that specific executive order, but that's part of a lot of them that are out there. So this one directs the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services to what it says, take all appropriate steps to end insurance coverage of these gender treatments for people under the age of 19. So this goes up to the age of 18. And that's a little unusual because 18-year-olds are generally sort of considered able to make a lot of their own choices and such. So they're not usually lumped in as children. They're usually considered adults in some of these situations. But anyway, this executive order says it would apply to those under age 19. And so who might be affected? And again, this is aimed at insurers. So the executive order specifically names several government programs, such as TRICARE, which, as you know, serves the military and its dependents, Medicare and Medicaid, federal and postal health benefit programs, and the Foreign Service Benefit Plan. So it directs the Department of Defense and the Office of Personnel Management to draw up rules, which is, we go back to the thing, they got to draw up rules or other guidance to accomplish what the executive order calls for. And remember, Medicaid programs are in every state. Medicaid is the federal state program for low-income folks and also covers a lot of people in nursing homes. But Medicaid programs vary pretty widely, with some limiting or setting restrictions on the type of care that can be provided to minors in just over half the states. The type of care meaning in transitioning from one gender to another. So already about half the states have some kind of limits on that for minors. So it's unclear exactly how this will all play out. But again, it's going to go through some kind of rulemaking, and those kinds of details will be spelled out in those rules. And right now, it's kind of unclear if it affects the Affordable Care Act coverage. And that's the plan that people who don't get job-based insurance can go out and buy their own coverage through the Affordable Care Act. So it's not clear if that's included in this directive or not. So again, we'll know more when we see what rules come out around this.
Yeah, because even the Affordable Care Act, there's been some, I think the president vowed to, dismantle that and to get rid of it as well. So we don't even know down the road what's going to happen with those forms of, insurance that are needed by so many people. But, one of the things that it was really worrisome to me, too, is that in your article, you were mentioning something that is sort of reminiscent of what happened with abortion, where people who were providing abortions were sort of singled out as providers and they could be prosecuted and that kind of thing. But the DOJ, it's been instructed to prosecute teachers and school officials, who help the trans children transition, including by using their preferred names. This is really bizarre. I'm not sure of how you would enforce that. Whether you have people sitting in the classroom or monitors going around now, sort of like Gestapo, I'm not sure. But this is really bizarre.
It does call the Department of Justice to do a number of things, and some of his other executive orders do as well. But it's around this idea of, can teachers use the pronouns that the kids want, or change if James wants to be called Jane instead, would that be prosecuted? But then you raise a good question: how would they know? What form would that take? And again, this is an order directing the Department of Justice. We don't know how they're actually going to do it. One other thing, it does direct the Department of Justice to work with Congress to promote legislation that would allow children and parents what's called a private right of action, basically the ability to file a lawsuit against medical professionals who provide transgender care. And it also directs the Justice Department to consider the application of existing laws to people who provide or promote access to gender care. They cited fraud statutes. For example, if anyone is providing what's called, misleading information about the long-term effects of gender transition. So there's a lot packed into this executive order, like many of them. So you brought up an interesting point, but that's certainly part of the order.
Yeah, because one thing is they were saying issue passports to identify, Americans only by their genders assigned at birth. And, one of the things that, being a physician, one of the things that came to mind right away was, you have cases where you have ambiguous genitalia and all those things where they need gender affirming care, to make sure that they're transitioning into, that kind of. So, I think they should really stay out of medicine, but that's another story altogether. And one of the things you mentioned was approximately it was a study from the William Institute from the UCLA Law School, but about 300,000 American children 13 to 17 years old were identifying as transgender. So that's a large number. So it's something that we need to deal with and contend with in the medical community. And of the 330 million who filed claims that were filed from 2017 to 2021, less than 15,000 patients, 6 to 17, with a diagnosis of gender dysphoria received gender-affirming hormone therapy, and less than 5,000 had started puberty-blocking medications. So when you look at the total picture of things, it's not just the medical care people are receiving. They're putting claims in, but they're not receiving this care. It may be that some of these claims were denied, or that they were putting these claims in just for medical care in general. I'm not sure of how those sort of played out. That now I have gender dysphoria. There's certain things I need some therapy, or how to deal with these different issues. So it seems like they are sort of pushing everyone into the same basket also, from what what the reports are looking at.
Well, the executive order would say that insurers can't provide that type of care. So what this study looked at was how many people under 18 are currently getting that kind of care. And this was actually there was that estimate from the Williams Institute that there's about 300,000 American children ages 13 to 17 who do identify as transgender. And then another survey, this one done by Reuters and Komodo Health, they looked at, like you mentioned, those health insurance claims, and they were just looking at certain things. So they were looking at those who had received sort of gender affirming hormone therapy, and there were about fewer than 15,000. And so gender affirming therapy generally occurs after a child starts puberty blockers. So puberty blockers stop the process of puberty. Gender affirming would reaffirm that the child wants to have puberty as the other sex. So those were those numbers. And so about 5,000 in this study had started puberty blockers, and the remainder had been on the other type. The same survey found there were relatively few surgeries, because surgery is another treatment that is mentioned in this executive order. And they said there were just over 800,000 surgeries among those 13 to 17 during that 3-year period. Remember, all these numbers are from a 3-year period. It's not per year. It was a 3-year period.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. But that's really interesting. So, in essence, if they do this, those people who are already receiving gender, care, I'm wondering, are they going to stop it now? I mean, that can have really deep psychological implications for the people who are receiving care or who are, currently under therapy. So it's almost like pulling the carpet from underneath them after having gone through this. Yeah.
There's already been a lawsuit filed to challenge this order, and one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit was a woman who has a 17-year-old daughter. And she said she moved her daughter from Tennessee to Virginia, as a matter of fact, because Tennessee, she couldn't get Medicaid coverage of it in Tennessee for her child who wants to transition. So her child's 17. They moved to Virginia. She had an appointment with her daughter to go in for a treatment just days after the order was signed, and the hospital canceled that appointment. So she's one of the folks in this particular lawsuit that has been filed. There's also been, even though the executive order mostly talks about health insurers, remember it also says that any hospital that doesn't comply risks losing their government funding, including like research and educational grants, and they could potentially lose their ability to participate in Medicare or Medicaid. And that's a really big deal for hospitals, because most hospitals rely heavily, particularly on like Medicare funding, as a big part of their budget. So they're watching this very carefully, because this could be a big threat to their bottom line. So what some of the advocates were telling me for my story is that this could have a chilling effect, even if the rule doesn't specifically target hospitals, or if they run the risk of losing some funding, it could have a chilling effect. So that's what we saw in this lawsuit that was just filed. But we also saw a story in the New York Times from Saturday that a hospital system there in New York had also canceled. They mentioned appointments for 2 12-year-olds who had been scheduled to receive these implants that dispense puberty blocking medications. So that was on Saturday. And then on Monday, the New York Attorney General sent out a letter reminding hospitals that they must follow state laws, including those that prohibit discrimination against individuals. And so that letter said, in part, that, quote, electing to refuse services, such as withholding the availability of services from transgender individuals based on their gender identity or their diagnosis, while offering such services to cisgender individuals, is discrimination under New York law. So in New York, at least, they're telling these hospitals, wait, you can't start canceling these appointments for that reason.
That's fantastic. I'm glad that they're standing up, and sort of doing some pushback. And also the executive order directs the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary to take all appropriate steps, right, to end insurance coverage of all the such treatments that you were mentioning. But it's affecting things like TRICARE, as you were mentioning, Medicare and Medicaid. You have the postal, federal and postal benefits plans and foreign service benefit plan, being affected. And those are some people that are critical for the operations within this country. So you have many people who are transgender that are holding positions honorably and doing, professional work at a very high level of competency, and to affect them directly, that was really bizarre that they would allow that to happen, because that can also affect the infrastructure of our organizations and our universities, and because people are involved in multiple things in our military, right? So this has implications that are almost a betrayal of their trust in the healthcare system and in the system in general about being employed.
Right. It's among a number of orders. There was a different order signed earlier that is expected to lead to transgender people being banned from the military service. So that order directs Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to come up with a new policy on the issue by late March. And in that particular order, the president wrote and asserted that being transgender, and he wrote, quote, conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. So there's been some reaction to that. Obviously, so in totality with all these different orders, there's definitely the President Trump is not supportive of transgender transitions and government-funded programs. He wants the Defense Secretary to come up with a new policy on the issue of transgender people serving in the military. So there's all of these things going on, and this, likely resonates with some of the folks who voted for him, some conservatives. You remember transgender issues were a big flashpoint during the campaign. Think about the debates over bathroom usage or trans players on school sports teams. So this is definitely something that folks support on one hand, but on the other hand, it's also drawn a lot of concern from other groups, from advocacy groups like Planned Parenthood, transgender rights groups, and the families that might be affected with these kinds of decisions. So, for example, there's a lot of fear out there. I spoke with the father of a transgender child who asked not to be named because, frankly, he's very worried about being attacked politically or otherwise if his name is out there. So we didn't use his name, but he said he and his wife cry every night about sort of the totality of all the actions aimed at trans people. And he told me that he feels he cannot keep his family safe from the government, basically. He's thinking of leaving the country, and he notes that sort of historically, when a government goes after one minority group, it often does not stop there, but targets others. So that's another side of this, is that people are saying that. And I don't know if you saw the story. There was a story in Time magazine last week by Patricia King, who she's described as a retired infantry non-commissioned officer who served 20 years in the U.S. Army, including 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan. Her piece says that she was the first openly transgender infantry soldier. And she said that distinction, she wrote, didn't inherently make me a better staff sergeant, but neither did it make me any less capable. And she went on to say that I have served my country. For 2 decades, I wore the uniform of an American soldier, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times, and led troops in combat. I didn't do it for politics. I did it because I believed in the values the military claims to uphold: service, integrity, and leadership. And you could read through it. I mean, so we're getting a lot. There's a lot of discussion, I think, out there on this issue. And like I said before, until we get a lot of the rules, we won't know exactly how this is going to play out. And these executive orders, as some of the others, are being challenged in court. So there'll be court cases too. So it's really unclear exactly how all of this will play out.
Yeah, and that's the thing that it's in the geopolitical arena, and people have their own certain views about this gender affirming care. But the one thing I'm fearful of is it gets to the heart of what you were saying, is that that transgender youth will be demonized, and the spread of misinformation and disinformation about gender affirming care will start to circulate through the media and through online chats and the bullying and all those things that are in the background, which can be a very explosive environment for those people who are going through the gender affirming care. And so, I'm hoping that people are a little bit more rational, hopefully, and start understanding that these are human beings. These are American citizens. And they, and as I was mentioning, in the beginning when we first started talking, that, democracy involves an open system. And if you have a closed system and you start doing things in a clandestine ways and putting all kinds of rules in, you start getting rid of things like the town square and the ability for people to express themselves, and your First Amendment rights, and the sanctity of your own self and your self-determination and agency, and then making sure that people are voting, and are in fair and free elections, not sham elections. And then minority rights. So this minority rights test is something that this is what you're alluding to, that there is a need to make sure that we protect those viewpoints of people who are in the minority. I was actually joking with someone in a segment just prior to this, and I said, well, the military is really a minority too. It's less than 1% of people actually serve in the country. And he started laughing, but that's the truth. And we are going to be really heavily dependent on the having an independent judiciary, because that is really what underlies all three of those platforms. The essential features of a democracy. If we don't have the judiciary acting in a correct way, or it is being cajoled to make a decision that is outside of the realm of what is legal or what is ethical and moral, we are going to have difficulties, going forward. So
yeah, we're going to see this play out across a lot of different realms, and certainly some of these questions are being raised in court already. So some of these rules are being looked at, and we'll see.
Okay, we have one more minute. We have 1 more minute to go, Julie. I'm going to let you go ad lib and stress some of the things that you think are important for people to pay attention to. Should we be writing our congressional members? What should we be doing?
Oh, I can't tell people what they should be doing. Except I think, like you, I really appreciate you having us on the air to talk about our stories. People should read, keep up with the news, follow what's going on, read a variety of news sources. I think that's you hit on that. It's freedom of the press. Read, inform yourselves. People are going to have different opinions and all these things, obviously, but the way to get at that is to know what's happening and to keep up with that. And that's where your program and others really play a role in getting the word out.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie Appleby. I know you'll be back, and because I'll be reading all of your articles. But you do a wonderful job. Thank you for doing what you do for the country and keeping us informed.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Information and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly.
All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Radio, print, and social media. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Iraq combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. Tonight, I have a very, very special guest, Amy Maxim. She is a Kaiser Family Foundation Health News Public Health local editor and correspondent. This is really an incredible discussion. She wrote an article, I think, that is something that everyone should read. I subscribe to the Kaiser Family Foundation Public, the Health News series, and every time I read it, they have some incredibly in-depth reviews of what's going on in our health system. What a U.S. exit from the World Health Organization means for global health is an article that she wrote on January 24th, 2025. I implore you to read this. It is really very well written and very informative. And it's something that's been keeping me up at night, the World Health Organization, something that Reagan supported. Multiple people were supporting this organization from president to president to president, and has done incredible jobs eradicating smallpox and such other things. But how are you doing, Amy? Because this is just such an important topic that you're covering.
Thank you for so many kind words. I am delighted to be here. So thank you very much for everything you do. And I'm doing all right.
Great. So tell us about this, because you were saying that the World Health Organization is shaped by its members. It was like 194 countries. I didn't realize that with that many countries that were involved in this. And it sets the health priorities and makes, agreements about how to share clinical data, treatments, and vaccines during international emergencies. So multiple things that they are involved in. But tell us a little bit more about what you found.
Yeah, so I think, the reason why, there's a few reasons why I would say, and, your introduction is exactly right on. This has been, across the aisle, presidents have supported our belonging to the WHO. I've talked to people who are in the Bush administration for this story. So a big reason why is right, because as a member, and actually as one of the largest donors to WHO, as a member, that's how we get to shape what the WHO does, how we, when the US wants reforms, the US has a lot of sway actually in what happens, and also in what agreements should be in place. So there's just sort of a lot of clout that the US has traditionally had at the World Health Organization. And so the fact that, right, so the way to shape the organization is as a member. It's actually the only way to shape it. So that's the reason why it's relevant to know there's 194 countries in here. So what I found from talking with people, and these are like health policy analysts and experts in foreign affairs and in public health, I would say there's a couple of reasons why everyone I spoke with is, thinks this is not a smart move for the US. One of the reasons is because of this power that we have a lot of clout at the WHO, and that also helps shape sort of, what happens in global health around the world. And by us leaving, we're roughly around 15% of the budget, but other countries will fill the vacuum. And so I talked to some experts who are, some, not all of them, but some are concerned that, other countries like China might be the ones to fill the gap, and then they will shape the agenda. The other reason why it's bad is for the other thing you mentioned is that the WHO does a lot of things. They fight outbreaks in places where the US doesn't really have a ground presence. Like, for example, I was in Eastern Congo in 2019 during the second largest Ebola outbreak. The WHO was there. They were staying in hotels that had actually, been hit by grenades. The US wasn't there at all. So the WHO operates in regions that the US doesn't necessarily reach. I should say, when I say the US, I mean the CDC and the USAID. So they're in regions we don't go to. And in a selfish sense, if we're worried about certain outbreaks, it's better to stop those outbreaks where they are. And so it sort of endangers Americans to make this group that is quite good at trying to combat outbreaks spreading in other countries from spreading further.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they were criticized for their handling or mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it really echoes what's going on with Project 2025's priorities, a mandate for leadership. And this was really, produced by the Heritage Foundation. But actually, they eradicated smallpox. They were involved with trying to eradicate polio now, globally. And they are involved in giving, HIV care, trying to stop the spread of a disease that can be devastating. And as you were saying, outbreaks like Ebola, right now in Uganda, they are dealing with a particularly viral form of the Ebola virus that they are concerned about. But by stepping back, you also supplant the intent of what we were doing as the United States for being there in the first place. Having the ability to put in safeguards, like we have the Environmental Protection Agency, we have other safeguards that we have as a nation, based hopefully on moral principles that are sound. But if you bring a China in that really has disregard for many of its citizens as far as pollution goes, as far as its approach to healthcare and denying things that were happening, that could have a devastating impact on the World Health Organization's balance of ethical considerations. I'll put it that way. So not being at the table is not an answer.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's and other executive orders that are related about foreign assistance is sort of about an America First policy. But, more than one person brought up, this isn't good for Americans. This is actually not an America First policy to step back. And to address your concern, it is true that in the executive order, President Trump, pointed out that, or said that the WHO mishandled the COVID pandemic. Also that echoes Project 2025 saying the same. And, WHO did make some mistakes. For example, I think they could have been quicker to say that the coronavirus was airborne and that masks help prevent spread. So they, definitely are not completely blameless. I don't know actually a health organization that isn't, but they did do a lot right. They talked to the press constantly. They vetted a lot of diagnostic tests and treatments. And moreover, the US did really poorly with COVID. We had one of the highest COVID death rates in the world.
Yes.
That is not on the WHO. On January 30th, the WHO they don't actually, until now, they didn't have a declaration of pandemic. They declared their highest alarm on January 30th. Public health emergency of international concern, or FAIC. Some countries responded really aggressively, like South Korea rolled out like a ton of tests immediately, and New Zealand. So a lot of countries were really quick to respond. The US did not. The US kind of put in half-hearted travel bans when it was, which are never, there's many studies showing they're never, really effective at all. Like you want to do domestic measures. So the US, I think, in a way, President Trump might be trying to displace blame on the WHO and its internal problems that were there.
Yeah, because I was really surprised. One of the things that you mentioned, it was a quote from, Project 2025, and it was saying that the Biden administration has deformed the agency, which means the WHO, by treating it as a global platform to pursue overseas a divisive political and cultural agenda that promotes abortion, climate extremism, gender radicalism, and interventions against perceived systemic racism. And it's really bizarre that you would put that in as being the criteria that you are looking at with WHO operations globally. It deals with other things, like polio and tuberculosis and HIV. Malaria is another big thing. We're actually seeing some cases in the United States now that are reporting in the southern portion of the state of the country, and then also in California. But we have measles and other diseases, and they are involved in making sure that vaccinations occur globally. So this has implications. If you take away the funding from the World Health Organization, you're actually allowing people to die. I mean, in Gaza, we can see what's going on now with the humanitarian crisis there at Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And these are some areas, like you were mentioning before, we don't really go into. These are places where the U.S. government really does not operate. So in order to protect the global, the entire country, the world, is to make sure that we're at the table.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's another reason was given was the WHO hasn't reformed. And, a lot of my sources sort of pointed out why they're not really buying the reasons given in the executive order. And if we wanted to reform, if the Trump administration wanted to reform WHO in a particular way, it'd be one thing if, after a year or 2 years of being within the agency and pushing, they didn't get specific reforms done, but they haven't done that. And there's no way to reform it from outside of it. And the WHO has actually undergone a number of reforms.
Yeah, that was really interesting because you had mentioned that, President Trump in his first term, had suspended funds to the World Health Organization in 2020 and had provided a termination notice, and so the U.S. contributions to that point hit a low of like $163 million. Exactly. And when Biden got in, he restored it to about $481 million, back in 2023. But that type of thing, the fear I have is that there's talk about whether that termination notice, because you have to give the World Health Organization 1 year before you withdraw, whether that termination notice is in effect and can still have legal weight.
I think that there's so many unknowns at this current moment. So sort of one of them is, right, so there's this sort of rule, but it's not in the WHO Constitution, but there's a sort of rule that, right, you have to give a 1 year notice. And the fact that the executive order recalled the first Trump administration giving their notice then, I think the argument is that they're going to say that they can withdraw right now. I know already there's kind of a weird situation where, like, there's, CDC, there's a number, I think something like 24 CDC staff who are actually in Geneva at the WHO who aren't allowed to talk to their colleagues right now at the WHO. So it's sort of, in effect, will this be fought? I'm not really sure. It's not like the WHO enforces that, I hear. So it would be like Congress fighting it. I think the general sentiment that I heard was that this is going to move forward, but that's speculative. Surprises happen.
Yeah, and one of the things you were also talking about, the funds for the WHO represent about 4% of America's budget for global health, and it's, in turn, it's less than 0.1% of the U.S. federal expenditures each year. You talk about return on investment. I mean, to have global health stability, it seems like a pretty small price to pay.
Yes, exactly. I think that's so important to stress that, because I'm sympathetic to thoughts of like, why would we be spending money abroad when we have problems here? I think that's totally valid concern. But right, when you hear it's like 4% of 0.1% of the budget, it's a very minuscule amount of money. Yeah, so it's a very small amount of money. And the WHO, besides doing those hands-on things in countries, they're trying to like also, when you see the WHO within countries, they work closely with country governments, like in low-income countries where the government health system really does need support, and they're trying to make those health systems stronger so that they could be more independent on their own. And that's something that, a lot of NGOs kind of operate outside of the government. So the WHO really performs this important function. They also do other stuff like we have the FDA. Europe has like the European Medicines Agency, but a lot of countries don't have such strong government agencies that are vetting diagnostics and drugs and vaccines. WHO does that for a lot of countries. So they also kind of perform functions we don't think about. They also are kind of a big venue for sharing data with the world. So if, Indonesia says that there's a weird outbreak of influenza, this WHO that's going to kind of collect that data, be kind of this intermediary of information that's really important.
Yeah, I'm just amazed because, getting back to the budgetary considerations when you're talking about all those additional things that the WHO does, their budget is about $3.4 billion. And they're about 33% of what the CDC gets is 9.3 billion, right? They're covering, and they're covering the entire world. I was the director for the Illinois Department of Public Health from 2007 to 2011. My budget was $800 million. That's almost $1 billion. So I had almost 1/3 of their budget to cover one state, Illinois.
Right. And that's like,
and that wasn't enough. I could tell you.
Higher payments under Biden to WHO. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to me what they're doing, and we cannot allow this to sort of fall down. But they were showing that there were so many missteps, as you were mentioning earlier, about the U.S. Response to COVID-19. But even in that particular situation, I mean, the World Health Organization helped us, even though we had poor results, by making sure that the rest of the world was safe, because we're in a global economy now where, planes go from place to place, and we are more connected than disconnected now in modern society. So that sentinel warning is so important for us.
Yeah, and I mean, I could point out too, in the end of January, they also, because once you have the sequence of the virus, so once we had the sequence of the coronavirus in early January, the WHO vetted different researchers around the world were making diagnostic tests that would detect the virus, and the WHO vetted them and kind of had on its website basically the recipe, more or less, for how you make a diagnostic test. Like there was one made in Germany that was like a very good one, and they put that out there on their website so that researchers around the world could start working on making diagnostic tests. And a lot of countries went ahead and used Germany's test. The US did not want to use it. We wanted to make our own test through our own CDC, which turned out to be sort of a botched test in the beginning. And then, we had you can't argue against one of our mistakes, which was our very slow rollout of testing. So let's just say the WHO was on it, right away, and we chose to ignore it. And it seems very clear that even if they make, they would do the same sort of thing again, they always make their information public. But it's clear that the US at this point would just not want to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, and I didn't want to give much mention of this. The World Health Organization, I guess President Trump was saying that they actually helped to cover the tracks of the Chinese Communist Party, and about where the origin of COVID was, from Wuhan, and it's just amazing to me. I can't even touch that particular.
Yeah,
viewpoint.
it's good to bring it up because it is one of those. It's you hear this sort of misinformation from the highest level, so it's like important to sort of confront it head on. And the WHO has actually called out China, especially now, for being slow to report the China did obscure the outbreak, and especially in those earliest days, they've obscured origin investigations. They didn't do a lot of reporting in January that they could have. So WHO has pushed China to do it. WHO does not have the power to force China or any other country to do anything. So I think that's like a misunderstanding that people have. They can't go in and tell a president to do something, just like they couldn't do it here. And another sort of bit of misinformation is that the WHO, through something they've been working on, or we have been working on with them until now, this pandemic agreement, there's sort of this misinformed rumor that it's somehow going to compromise American sovereignty. And just like, WHO couldn't force China's hands, they can't do anything to impinge on our sovereignty. They can't do that with any of their members.
Yes, right, yes. And there was also one thing that was, that really was sort of parallel to this was the order for the U.S. to cease negotiations on a pandemic agreement and what the implications were for the pharmaceutical industry. You were mentioning that as well in the article.
This is an angle I just personally find super interesting. So there were some researchers I spoke with who did mention this interesting angle. It's not for the reasons that Trump or the Heritage Project wants, in terms of like a silver lining, but the US has often pushed certain views or policies that a lot of other countries, specifically like middle income countries, don't like. So the US has, one of those is the US has long been a very ardent defender of pharmaceutical companies' patent rights. So there has been a push by like middle income countries, I'm thinking about like Brazil and South Africa and India, to say, listen, when supplies are short, let's say we're in an emergency and supplies are short. During the HIV crisis in the earlier days, there was not enough treatments, and the treatments were because there's a small, there's a small supply, prices are really high. Similarly, during the first year of COVID vaccines being out, there was a real shortage. So countries in the global south did not get COVID vaccines for a long time. And there's a research paper estimating that, more than 1 million people died because of the way that only wealthy countries had vaccines. So there's been a push to say, in an emergency, when people are dying and there's not enough supplies, more companies need to be able to make vaccines and drugs. And the way to do that is to say, these licenses need to be shared. There might even be royalty fees, but they need to be shared so that companies can make essentially generic versions of those things so that people can get the treatments. And so that was something that countries had pushed for. In the beginning, I think it's been sort of fought really heavily by the pharmaceutical industry, and also the US has also asserted that, as have a number of Western European countries. So that might not get through, but that's an example of an area where people said, maybe a little bit less clout from the US could be a good thing. That said, the shortage of money is going to be really tough.
Yeah, because, I'm thinking about the combination of this, thing with the pharmaceuticals and, not allowing countries to produce them, indigenously so that they can actually help their their populations, but that it also extends scientific research and the discovery of new things as well, which is really a bad thing to happen. But one of the things that you mentioned in the article was Oyade Alakija. He's the chair of the African Union Vaccine Delivery Alliance, and it's really interesting. This power is shifting hands that he was mentioning. And he says maybe that will give us a more equitable and fairer world in the long term. But I think that one of the things that's so important about your article is that it's also pointing to the fact that if we pull out of things like the World Health Organization, USAID, and those kinds of things, we actually change the dynamics in of all these countries globally. And we're talking about power changes and structural changes and government changes and how people will respond to the U.S. We also leave a vacuum in which China can step in, where other countries can step in and supplant the position that we've had globally as a leader in the delivery of healthcare and medicine, right, and research.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. It's, this is why I like to talk with people from around the world, but for international stories. So the person you mentioned, she's Nigerian, and I think there is some thoughts that, it's within the US, people will immediately think a lack of US leadership is going to be a terrible thing. But she was just sort of saying, maybe not. maybe kind of the ideas, that we're hearing out of India or China or Indonesia, maybe that is what's coming up next. So maybe it's just sort of an end of an era where the US and European countries have had a lot of control. The kind of assumption I heard from a lot of people was that European countries won't fully fill the gap in funding because there's so much preoccupation with the war in Ukraine. So the thought is that Asian countries will sort of step up.
Yes. That's really amazing. I'm hoping that we don't lose the opportunity to stay on board. That's going to be critical for our national defense and security. Globally too. And then one other thing you mentioned I thought was really interesting was the WHO has about 70 centers and hosts at U.S. institutions such as Columbia University and Johns Hopkins, and that is going to directly potentially impact their grant structures and how they get funded for research as well.
Yeah, and those are centers where scientists collaborate. And I think another fear is that other countries might follow in the US's lead. There is sort of, I think, in my opinion, a lot of the kind of fears about WHO are actually not based on real things. Like I mentioned the thing about, WHO taking away country sovereignty and stuff. Argentina actually just pulled out of the WHO as well. It's a small amount of funding, but the fear is what if other countries follow? And as one of my sources who's at the Council on Foreign Relations said is he told me, if we didn't have a WHO, we would have to create a WHO. There needs to be an international body for this.
Yeah, and that was it's the third executive order you mentioned in Article 2. I know we're running close on time, but it was really talking about the need to be in line with an American first foreign policy, which seems to be kind of antithetical to some of the positions we've just been talking about. The other countries may not see that as being a nice thing to say to them in the situation we're in. But we're running out of time. So, Amy, I just want to thank you. Thank you so much. I encourage people to read your articles. Get online and the Kaiser Family Foundation, the health news. Make sure that you are a subscriber and read her article. This is so critically important that we stay informed, especially now. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All righty.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Disseminated. G Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Oh, hey, everybody. How you doing? Rob Howard, CEO for Zodiac Solutions. We're a green energy provider for a lot of the things that you see we need now. It's been a while since I got the chance to come visit with you. Been extremely busy because there is so much happening in the green energy space. And I said, okay, with all of the changes, we might want to revisit, let's reset, particularly for our veterans, what's actually happening out there that they may want to connect to, whether it is owning your own business, whether it is understanding the employment opportunities. The key is getting engaged. I took a few notes, and some of the questions I've been getting out there is like, what is clean energy? And I wanted to make sure I covered that to kind of set us up. And basically when you hear people talk about clean energy, what they're talking about are energy forms that don't require the burning of fossil fuels. Use that as a base and then ask yourself, okay, how do I get involved in that area? Because it is growing. It is absolutely becoming one of the largest areas of energy. Right now, when everyone is talking about AI, they're talking about data and the requirements that data has for energy. As big as those computers are, if we don't have the energy to run them, if I just pull the plug, then you have no AI, you have no data processing. And so they need secure energy. So some of the things we need to think about, particularly from a veteran, you understand process. You understand team building. You understand teamwork. So when we start talking about what's available in the clean energy industry, we're talking about spending upwards of $1 trillion a year on our energy network. I want to repeat that. Each year, spending close to $1 trillion on the energy system. Now, what type of work is that going to be? We're talking about transmission lines. We're talking about distribution systems. We're talking about that's just to get that power moved. But then where are you moving it from? You're talking about large scale solar projects. You're talking about battery energy systems. And now we're getting to a point to where our storage systems, because people will say, particularly I'm in California, and in California, we've been doing a lot of work around changing over our energy systems. What do I mean change over? We want to get away from fossil fuels. Let's get into renewable energy, and there's different types. I don't know if we'll have enough time to talk about geothermal because it's energy, but also one of the things we've been exploring and working with some of our cities on, believe it or not, is garbage. And you say, what? Yes, garbage. We've got large dumps. They take the trash, they dump the trash. What happens to that trash? That trash breaks down. And then in the breakdown, what's the offtake? It's methane gas. Well, methane gas can be used in our hydrogen fuel cell units to either make energy or just make us provide hydrogen. What can hydrogen be used for? Transportation. Hydrogen can be used for energy. Hydrogen can be used for making electricity. So we can take this. Remember, we were talking about, well, what is clean energy? It's where we do not have to burn carbon fuel to create energy. And remember, that energy is simply the moving. We want to get to a point to where we're able to move electrons, and so we can use methane gas for that. Some of the other things I wanted to talk about is for our business owners who are concerned about with the changing in administration, what do we do? Keep this in mind. Put your focus on what you can control. And what you can control is, am I setting up my business to be able to do the things I need to do in order to be successful? What success is different for different people. For me, success is really ensuring that the people I'm working with and are collaborating with, doing business with in our communities, are we learning? Are we genuinely learning? Because there's so much to learn about how we change that if you're not helping people learn and you're only focused on profits, you're missing an opportunity to be better. So one of the things we want to do, and I tell those business owners, focus on what you can control. Now, I can control to ensure that instead of me worrying about everybody else, that I am learning everything I need to know about the business area I want to go in. All businesses will need to ensure, if you're not doing the accounting, you have someone who has good accounting skills to be able to handle the business part of your business. And I know it's a little bit off talking about the clean energy area, but I want to talk directly to veterans about what you need to do. Oftentimes, the smaller businesses, you're a brand new business. So create your network. Start looking at those big companies that are working in this area and find ways to connect with them. Why that's important, it's one of the things when I'm mentoring young people who want to complain about, I don't want to work at one of the coffee shops, or I don't want to work at this place. I said, when you work for a large corporation, keep in mind they have spent thousands, if not millions of dollars on their training regimen. Learn everything you can on the job you are on, because they've already spent the money investing in the training. So you don't have to spend that money on your business. So regardless of what you are doing, focus on learning as much as you can. And another thing, I had a friend tell me, and I'm sure some of you may have heard, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's one of the things we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So as you're learning and growing, it's not easy. You don't just, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work at it. That's what the Navy taught me. Okay, you're going to be working these crazy hours. You're going to be learning and really studying nonstop, because I was a nuclear operator. Our whole goal was to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, or they will kick you out of the program. So I didn't have a choice. So keep focusing on what you can control. And as you're setting up your business, I'm in California. We have it is an amazing network of trainings that are online, that are free, where you can go in and learn how to start a business, how to set up an LLC, how to set up an S Corp, how to get your disabled veteran status with the Department of General Services, with Caltrans. These are just California areas, and with the California Public Utilities. Learn all of that. Keep doing that, and let's circle back. That network. Okay, that network that you have, that's how you're going to say, okay, I'm trying to get my disabled veteran status, for my business. There are people who are willing to help you. So the business information, the business work that you have to do hasn't changed. However, what has changed is Instead of us focusing on oil and gas, we're focusing on how do we reduce, they call them GHGs, greenhouse gases. How do we reduce them? So let's take commercial and let's talk residential. On the residential side, when you're paying your electric bill, and this is like if you want to get into solar and battery storage, remember that what you want to do is help the residents in these residential areas. You want them to be able to save. So you help them get these systems installed. You help them with the battery storage. And California, I'll give you an example. The highest cost for energy is after the sun starts to go down. Why is that? That's because we no longer have the solar providing that energy. But if you've used that solar to charge the batteries, now on my home, you get what I call a twofer. I get to discharge for the electricity I'm using at my home from that battery that I installed. But also, you're not paying a delivery charge to your home because you had to get that electricity from off the grid. So what does clean energy do? It provides us an opportunity to use the sun, which is free, and then to store that energy and use that energy at a cheaper price. We've got sometimes during the 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. time frame, the kilowatt cost is 80, 90, in some places over $1 a kilowatt. Now, during the day, it's really cheap because there's so much solar on the grid. So you're off peak. So do you want to have a business to help these residents? I may want to start a business where I am helping people, one, learn how to save money. And I am able to do that, and they'll pay me to do it. So working in the solar industry is one way, but not just on, if you're the smaller businesses, you probably need to start on the residential side. Why? Because the opportunities are there. You can start working, and it's not a heavy lift, doesn't require as much financial outlay. But let's say you get to a point to where you want to work on commercial projects. Imagine a business and a warehouse where you can put solar on the roof, but you also have battery storage. A cargo container, I can get a megawatt of battery storage. So now I've got the solar. I am using during the day, I can put enough to use during the business, but I want to charge those batteries. Now, what am I doing during the 4 to 9? Depending on the arrangement you have, guess what? This clean energy that you got from the sun, charged your battery. Now you can literally discharge either to the business, or you can set an arrangement with local utilities to discharge that power to the grid. So keep in mind, these are opportunities that we didn't have before. The utility structure in the past was we generated it at a power plant. We had the transmission and distribution lines to your house. That was it. Now we're in a distributed energy piece where if I have land close to a switching center, I am able to develop a project and then actually put that on the grid. If I have warehouse space, I'm able to now, I can use a portion of that warehouse space for battery storage. I can use a portion of that space for solar. I'm able to have energy. And when we talk about a distributed energy platform, keep in mind, we're talking, you can do it anywhere in rural areas. And what's really coming into play with the technology is it's available in urban areas now. I can take a multi-unit home or a multi-unit apartment building. There's technology now to individually meter those units. So I can have a project nearby, having that power go to that multi-unit home, and I can individually meter those individuals. And then what's so spectacular about all of that, here's something to think about. Not only are you able to do that, but because of the technology that is coming forth, we're able to now say in low-income communities, again, remember the learning opportunity. Low-income communities now can get involved with we're working on a program now where we are able to help people train and learn this industry. Someone has to do the work. Who better to help our communities than veterans? So do your homework, do your structure set up, get your business ready, but also create your network. I want to talk about creating your network for all of those things we talked about. Number one, I would advise you to ensure that people who are in this business make the phone call. Show up at networking events. And the key to strengthening your network, don't show up asking people, hey, I need a contract. Show up to learn, to get to know people, to develop those relationships. Now, I know we're in a microwave society. We want everything to happen right now. But keep in mind, my mom, my late mother was a cook. All the kids in the neighborhood used to hang out at our house because they always knew my mama was cooking something. The thing about a good cook is that they're able to bring people together. Good cooks create relationships. So when I think about strong networking, I think about my mom because she was easygoing about it, but she knew she could have conversations with all my friends and find out everything I did wrong because somebody was going to tell while they're shoving cake and cookies in their mouth. So creating your network is about the relationship and the information you can develop. So, but also one of the things that is sorely underrated that new businesses don't do is they don't have discussions, conversations with their elected officials who are deciding how much money is going to go into these communities. And so what you want to do is make sure you have a relationship either with the elected official or their staff, whether no matter what level, once you get outside of your town, okay, your city council, your mayor, get to know them, get to know their staff. Your assembly people and your state senators, get to know their local staff. They have people in that district and they work for you. Find out what is happening. Also, local chambers of commerce, because that's a group of businesses looking to network. It's set up for you. And don't forget about local veteran chambers and veteran groups so that you can do the learning. This is not a microwave opportunity. This is a slow cook because you want this to be a wonderful, wonderful situation. So what have we done so far? We talked about clean energy. We're talking about no greenhouse gas emissions. We don't want to burn fossil fuels. We talked about what is happening, upwards of $1 trillion a year on this infrastructure. And that's on the infrastructure. That's on creating solar, battery storage, creating hydrogen fuel cell. You've got school districts that are now putting solar on the parking lots. Well, those, depending on your local area, you can be involved in that. But you can also help them get some battery storage. So during the summer when they're out, that's a revenue stream that could literally circle back to the school district. So it's not just about you benefiting. I firmly believe if you're not helping other people with what you're doing, you're missing an opportunity to grow. You're missing an opportunity to do the good that we as veterans have been taught to do. I take it all the way. So we're looking at what's going to be happening. We talked about how you develop your business and the other thing, and what groups you're going to be involved with. So make sure you make time to learn and to grow, and when I say to learn and to grow, you're learning from others. Yes, I know a lot of people like go to YouTube. Oh, I can fix anything. I just go on YouTube and learn it. But in order to take your business to the next level, do not be the smartest person in the room. Go there with humility, get to know people, and really, I found for me that if you carry a joy with you, and what I mean by that is, I recognize that I got the opportunity to learn the skills that took me through multiple years working for a utility and starting my own business through the military. That is an absolute blessing. When you have a blessing, I always consider it not being for me. I want to share that. So the more I do to help grow my business, I can like talk about what I did. But no, it's about me being able to have more to share. I want young, entrepreneurs to, let's have this conversation. Let me help you get to where you need to get to. Let me help you talk to the people you need to talk to. And again, they don't have to take it, but networking is not about asking people for anything. It's about creating relationships. So you're doing those kinds of things. And so some of the things that I would say as we get, because we don't have all the time in the world, but the other thing as we catch up on what's been happening with regard to the green energy space, recognize that the ability for companies to get involved in this, even though they may not be in the energy space, that's your opportunity. You can help companies lower their energy usage, and you can help people who are struggling with their utility bills. One business that I think is so underrated and doesn't get enough support is the area of weatherizing our homes. I can put a huge solar battery system on my home where I can afford all that AC in the summer and big electric heating in the winter. But the question is, had I weatherized that house, ensuring that the windows are sealed and the doors are sealed, that they don't leak out all that energy you're putting in, that minimal cost for weatherization, I don't have to buy or I don't have to put on as big a system. So you use common sense in the middle of this. Weatherizing homes, and you should check because many states offer grants to do that. And if your business is specializing in that, not only are you able to do it, it's a great entry level to train students and young people looking for work who want to work with their hands. This whole you gotta get 4 years of college, those days are over. They are over. We need to get to a point again. Who are you helping? Who are you supporting? Because if you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, the good part, the profit part, the success part, it comes. But success is more than just what you put in your bank. When you, as a veteran, took an oath to serve the Constitution, serve and defend, remember, what we want to do is after service, we want to keep doing that. So remember, also, this part that we're doing, if you are building a business in your community around clean energy, the economic development opportunities, the jobs that are available, because again, each one of these systems that you're installing has to have the engineering, procurement, and construction people. They have to have people the electricians they need to know, the construction folks, they need to know everything about what they're doing. They need the training. So what you're doing is, if you're doing enough work, which if we're spending $1 trillion, there's going to be a lot of work. If we're doing that, guess what? That has to get down to the worker level. So get involved, get engaged. And let's see, what other did I want to talk to you about is, again, I want to reiterate for this economic development piece to occur, all of those steps we talked about help you get there. That means you need to be talking to the chambers to find out what's coming. You need to be talking to elected officials to find out what they approved. Because at the state level, they're voting on what's going to be spent. At the federal level, they're voting on what needs to be spent. And at the end of the day, when constituents speak out about what their needs are, you create success by meeting the need. There are communities where we can go in, help businesses with their refrigeration, help businesses with their roofs so that we can have solar, we can do battery, we can have hydrogen fuel cell. There's school districts that want to pay so that they can get their schools in a position where they can save money on their electric bills. The economic development opportunities are through the roof, but you must take it one step at a time. You must prepare, you must get ready. And I mean, between the learning, make sure your business, all your business things are done the right way. You can get help. A lot of that information is online and free. The one thing that came out of COVID was that a number of trainings, a number of development opportunities are now on video. Check in with your local chamber, check in with your local veterans groups, call your Congress member, call your mayor, call your city council member. Remember, they work for you, and say, hey, I'm looking for information on how do I start and grow a business. And at the end of the day, talk to Uncle Google. You can literally do a lot of research. Get you an AI system that you can go in and start asking questions. You go to ChatGPT or you go to Studio. Where do I find X? What I have found is AI can be used to give me the starter information. If I have a thought, I have an idea, I'll go in and AI and say, hey, give me ideas on how to present a presentation to a homeowners association on solar and battery storage, the benefits and the pros and cons for their homeowners association. Be, as explicit as you can be, and okay, you get information. Maybe it's not everything you want, go back in. But what happens is it will shorten your research time. Again, when you're in business, the one thing you want to be able to do, time, there's only so much of it. So you want to be efficient with it. You want to be as smart with your time as you can. And so I just want veterans to know, regardless of where you sit on your political spectrum, pro, con, or whatever, if you want to be good for our country, take this opportunity to learn everything you can. Take this opportunity to support someone. And as a veteran, you all know, not everybody we served with looked like us. Not everybody we served with was the same gender. Not everyone we served with was somebody that I want to take home to my mom to meet. But we stayed on mission. So one thing I want you to do, folks, is keep in mind we want to stay on mission. How can we improve? How can we take advantage of this clean energy economy that is literally don't get left behind? It's there for you. It's up to us to figure out how we want to do it. And if you got questions, I know American Heroes Group is going to be there to answer questions. They'll leave you a phone number to have this conversation. But trust me, you have an opportunity that you can actually take advantage of. And if you don't want to start your own business, look for businesses to help you get started. A number of business owners worked for other businesses before they went out on their own. So I just want to say it's wonderful to get a chance to talk to you more. I'm excited about the possibilities, folks. And so veterans, stay on mission. You know how to do it. So everybody, I want to thank you for giving me some time to just share with you what's been happening, what's available, what you can do, and some recommendations on how to get to the next level. And hopefully I'll be back soon and we can target some of these opportunities. But again, Rob Howard, Clean Energy Alliance, I just want to let you know I appreciate being here. And thank you so much, everybody. It's been wonderful to hang out with you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Information and resources are empowered intentionally.